Celia Farber, this is Radio Free Science on the Progressive Radio Network on April 13th. My guest today has fans. One of Liam's fans was actually in my kitchen, and we were talking about it is the thing that Liam Scheff does that nobody else does. And this particular fan of Liam, I love the way he just... And I had a kind of a feeling, slightly melancholy. I was thinking, I wish I could do that. It's been 27 years on this story, 26, 27, I don't know, lost count. Liam's been on the AIDS story and many others, but we're sort of like suffering siblings on the AIDS story together. I wish I could do that, but until today, until 2 hours ago, 3 hours ago, until today, I was still negotiating like a traumatized child negotiates psychologically. Well, I know my mother or father or uncle, beat me with a big heavy frying pan every night. But I know my father loved me. I know my mother I know there was some reason, and I've been bending over backwards all these years, and today my soul is both broken and freed after reading a study that Liam Scheff brought to all of our attention. And I saw Liam's headline to us. Okay, now they're saying more sex is better, a double HIV infection. Okay, you're going to think I'm kidding. I'm going to go to the study now. Here's what the AIDS establishment is saying now, and we're going to bring Liam in and also my co-host Dave Rasnick. The best thing you can be is still not at all what they would call infected with HIV negative. But the next best thing you can be is infected twice. I'm not kidding. I wish I were kidding. I need Liam Scheff to help me stay calm, maybe even laugh. Liam, are you with us?
Hey, can you hear me?
Yeah. Dave Rasnick, are you there?
I am here.
So, the study, I'm going to just stay calm and say what it is first, and then
stay calm, everyone.
Fred Hutchinson Cancer Research Center. And I'm not reading now from Liam Scheff's blog website, which is reducetheburden.org. Sorry, Liam, is it .org or .com?
It's an org. Okay,
reducetheburden.org. I am not reading parody now. I am reading the study. It's titled, Study Finds HIV Superinfection Boosts Immune Response. Findings may provide insight into HIV vaccine development.
It's a tough one.
Wait for it. Women who have been infected by two different, and thank you, Liam Scheff, I would never have known of this or dreamed of it if you hadn't brought it to my attention. Women who have been infected by two different strains of HIV from two different sexual partners, a condition known as HIV superinfection, have more potent antibody responses that block the replication of the virus compared to women who've only been infected once. Those poor souls. These findings by researchers at Fred Hutchinson Cancer Research Center in Seattle are published online March 29th in PLOS Pathogens. Quote, we found that women who were infected twice not only had more potent antibody response, but some of these women had elite antibody activity, meaning that they had a broad and potent ability to neutralize a wide variety of strains of HIV over a sustained period of... I can't do it anymore. Welcome, Liam. Welcome, Dave. I got to calm down. Liam, tell me how you found this.
It's our good friend. It's our really good friend, Terry Michael. Terry runs the Washington Center for Politics and Journalism. And Terry's a gay man who's been watching this racket for a long time. I think he was a believer for a long time, and only a few years ago came upon the Semmelweis controversy and decided to look into it. And that's where you were being honored for your you and Peter Duesberg were being honored for your article in Harper's. So Terry looked into that. He said, well, I'm going to, like I did in the beginning, I'll prove these guys wrong. He looks into it and he goes, oh my God, I've been suckered for so long. And he just sends this stuff out. So I looked at it and I thought, oh, we just won. I mean, this is it. The more sex you have, the better you are off.
I have several words in mind. Psychotic. It's psychotic. It's also unusual. It's also, I feel it's abusive. This is abuse.
Yeah, it probably is.
I mean, reading this and being asked to entertain this as anything is abuse. It's abuse. And I think what I was talking about waking up to how one has tried to reconcile. I'm not speaking of anybody else present. I'm just speaking for myself. That all these years I was still holding out something that I can't quite describe. Well, maybe. And do you understand that feeling? You had it a long time ago, I guess, Liam, and I think, Dave, you probably did too. But I only really broke in half today. There's no...
Dave, you probably gave up on them. I gave up on them a long time ago.
No, I just love it when stuff like this comes out, because at some point you got to wonder who besides us, what other people who aren't following this whole insanity, one of these days, if they were to see something like this, they got to go, oh my God, what kind of sense does that make?
So are we masochists?
No. But this is their Jonathan Swift moment. I mean, this is where he goes and he talks to the Lilliputians and he talks to the very big, I can't remember all their names, the horse people, and at the end, it's only the horses, the animals that make sense to him.
Excellent, Jonathan Swift. That's our man. Yeah.
So what do you do with this? You go to the people who, because it's always the gay community, right? It's always the gay community, and you can say this, I can say this to people who are descendants of children of the African diaspora. We call them African Americans here, but people whose skin is a little darker, and they're always targeted for this. And you can go, you understand the government made slaves of your great-great-grandparents, and now they're targeting you to be tested with a test that comes up positive for bovine exposure, and they go, oh my God, and they can get it. And you can go up to a Haitian, or you can go up to a South American, and they go, oh my God, it's just like the politics in our country, they're so devious. But you go up to an adult gay man somewhere in his 40s or 50s, especially in New York or Los Angeles, and they go, oh, that's very interesting, it's so full of contradictions.
Well, I'm sorry, but I have to label that. Here's what's coming together in my thinking, apart from all these years, decades, forget years, of trying to make heads or tails of this AIDS morass, the paradigm, whatever we call it. I'm also reading psychology, and my favorite writer of human psychology is Alice Miller. And she talks about the phenomenon of idealizing and sparing the parent, which is possibly the most primordial instinct we have. And I think that those particular gay men you speak of are trying to spare a figure. Does that make sense?
Drama of the gifted child, you mean?
Yeah, I think what I'm saying is psychologically, and it applies to all of us, and I think what you're saying is that for some reason when you bring this up with gay men, it's harder. Is that what you're saying? There's more of a reluctance to say, "Oh my God."
Oh yeah, they can't. They can't just come forward and say, "Wow, we've been lied to." Not only
so,
have
what
we
do
been
you
lied
attribute
to,
that
but
to, though, Liam? What's the difference between what's going on their side? What is it? I mean, what is our collective reluctance to just say, this is the most insane, psychotic set of propositions ever labeled science?
Well, in the gay community, it's because there's very little. There's still not enough time. There's still not enough identity that isn't wrapped around this idea of. I don't know. You grow up. Let's say you grow up and you're a bunch of kids and you survive some terrible thing in an orphanage, and you look back and and you say, well, we all made it together, and even though we were all beaten and some of us were raped and some of us died, it made us stronger.
Right.
Well, that's just it's a lie. It didn't make you stronger. It beat, raped, and murdered some of you. You survived it.
Right.
I don't know what the psychology
Alice
is.
Miller would agree with you. No, well, you're describing it. We agree, but okay. Well, we'll get down to the psychoanalysis is something that I think we've all avoided, and maybe rightly so. But I'm not avoiding it anymore because now I feel that this is simply an abusive paradigm, and they are. And okay, what's abuse? When I read this, I think to myself, so. Like, you know the movie Gaslight with Ingrid Bergman, where her husband tries to make her think she's insane, and he's changing the size of the flame all the time, and she's and that's so it's a fantastically useful term, gaslighting. Gaslighting, also known as abuse, is to make something impossible to comprehend, or to remove a reality and let the other person always fall into that empty hole. Wait a minute, but I saw it, but I heard it. No, you didn't. So the question is, where's the exits? Where's what way out? How many times can we say this is nuts? And yet there's something we're all still working through. What are we working through? What are you working through still, Liam, about this? Someone called me the other day, a lawyer, and he said, why don't you just declare victory, all you guys, and just move on to something else? Yeah,
I kind of agree. I mean, I don't really have any more hang-ups about this. I went through the stage where I kind of went through everything. I went through the stage where I thought about what if you test positive for a long time. I got tested years ago when I was in a relationship that was ending. It was like 17, 40, 23, trying to do the math in my head. 15 years ago, let's say it was 13, 14 years ago, I'm at the end of a terrible relationship. And I was traveling, and I met somebody, and we did what young people will do in a moment of not entirely considerate excitement, and then I just felt terrible, and it was the only time that I'd ever really felt like getting tested. And I went and I was in another country, and I went and I said, I would like, je voudrais un test for HIV, s'il vous plaît. And they said, are you homosexual? And I said, no, I just want an HIV test. And they said, but are you a drug user?
Wow.
And I said, no, I just want an HIV test. I don't understand your questions. So I was sort of onto it. But I insisted because I felt so bad, because even though I was at the end of one terrible relationship, it pushed my old Protestant, weird Lutheran button about you're not supposed to do that. If you're not broken up with somebody, you don't sleep with anybody else. And I felt so emotionally, psychologically bad about it, I had to go get this, absolution.
Wow. That is very interesting. Dave, I want to bring you in here. How in terms of studies that take the cake, how does this one rate for you?
This is pretty good. I have a number of feelings about it. First of all, you were talking about the gay community. I'm thinking about what about the scientific community? This paper is, in my mind, an indictment of the so-called peer review process. I mean,
how so?
You got many. If this should be obvious. The contradictions and the weirdness should be obvious to anybody, and you would think even more so to scientists, in a way, if they had any kind of critical thinking at all. So that's one thing. The other thing is that this. The history or the background of this superinfection business and these elite progressors and controllers and all that sort of thing goes back to the 1990s when these patients that they were talking about are African, Kenyan.
Prostitutes.
Yeah. And I remember back in the 90s, there was this, late 90s, there was all this hoopla about these Kenyan prostitutes, South African prostitutes, and possibly Ugandan, I don't remember, the third country, that did, even though they either did not become HIV positive, or if they did not get AIDS. And that was a big story in the scientific literature for a few years in the 90s. And the whole point being, well, let's study this, and maybe we can come up with a vaccine, so on and so forth, see what's so special about these people. This is just the latest addition. They're still using the exact same people, but they're using different words for it and fancier technology, but it's still the same nonsense.
Yeah, Dave, when I was first researching this, Dave, you know my uncle by reputation, John Mellors. It's not like he and I get together and talk at family reunions.
Right.
Wow.
But he's the guy who put forward the notion.
Liam is his nephew, I guess.
Oh,
yeah.
Son of a gun. I didn't know that. No.
I thought I told you. Yeah, yeah.
Maybe you did.
My grandfather was Robert Mellors, who worked when he was a kid. I mean, he was just a kid. I guess he was coming out of Case West. And I'm not trying to hold this up against my family. My uncle's work is crap, in my opinion. I think it's just awful. I'm not here to judge him as a person, but it's just despicable work. And it's there's nothing I can say about it. It just is. But I come from that family, and my grandfather, we were told to be very proud because he set up the Sabin lab as part of his scholarship. I guess he was, going to Case Western or something. And anyway, that's just part of the family lore. But my uncle, and we're not close, so I'm not hurting anybody's feelings, wrote a paper years ago that Dave wrote, actually a really good paper on, called, what was it, dead HIV is pathogenic, or non-virulent HIV is pathogenic.
A Gordon conference. I asked him, I said, do you mean, he was talking about all these inactive, non-infectious HIV particles, and I said, do you mean these non-viable, non-infectious HIV particles are pathogenic? And he said yes.
Yeah. Now, they actually wrote they had papers on it.
So hang on, Dave. So you spoke to Liam's uncle at the Gordon conference? Wow.
Yeah.
It was before I was writing anything. I was just a kid screwing around and going to college and studying Italian. So.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay, this is fascinating. I mean, I just want to say, okay, let's go back for a second. The early 90s, I recall vividly, in the very early 90s, the go-to guy for this data was Robert Root Bernstein. I mean, apart from Peter Duesberg, Robert Root Bernstein was the one who was really out there on the, as my father would say, on the ramparts with a broken bourbon bottle, although that was never his style. But he was prostitutes aren't getting HIV or AIDS, or sex is not connected to AIDS. And I remember vividly the first time I heard Peter Duesberg refer to AIDS as, well, did he say HIV or did he say AIDS? I think he said that AIDS was not infectious. I'm talking maybe 1988. Infectious, and I had to take smelling salts, and I mean, I said, oh God, oh no, I thought it was the end of the world, the end of the magazine, that darkness would fall. Like, it's one thing to say that HIV was infectious, AIDS was infectious, everything was infectious, but maybe HIV by itself wasn't pathogenic or causing the disease. Now, these things are all together in one. Do we all agree it's all the same thing? Infection spread is at the root of what causes a disease. And yet they were sort of two branches.
Well, I have a different... my point of view is... sorry, Dave, I don't want to interrupt.
No, go ahead.
My point of view is more... you have an old argument. There's Robert Koch, or Robert Koch, in the German, and there was Louis Pasteur, the French guy who was cutting dogs into pieces to see what he could discover. And there was Antoine Béchamp. And Antoine Béchamp came forward and said, look, we're all surrounded by the same germs. It's not the germ, it's the environment. And I'm from the environment group because we're all exposed to... I'm here in New York City. I'm way downtown. You're way uptown. We're all exposed to germs all the time. It's
I totally
the body's
agree with
ability to deal with it. You understand where I'm going?
Yes, but what I'm saying is, have there not been essentially two branches, however schizoid, let's call it schizoid, from the beginning of the so-called HIV debate, where on the one hand we're talking about whether HIV, in quotation marks, is pathogenic. On the other hand, we're talking about whether HIV is infectious. On the third hand, we're talking about whether AIDS is infectious. I mean, help me unfurl.
Here's a fourth hand.
Okay.
Does HIV exist as a particle? I'd say no. And Dave, actually, when I was doing the AIDS debate thing for the Boston paper, I was really asking Dave and Peter and Christian Fiala, I said, what do you mean? Let's use this word carefully. What do you mean by HIV? Can you hold it in your hand? And Dave actually said that the only time he'd ever seen what they talk about when it's like that book. What do we talk about when we talk about love? What do we talk about when we talk about HIV?
Right.
What the concept is? Can you hold it in your hand, or is it just a bunch of laboratory stuff? And Dave gave me a line that stuck in my head, and I went to research it. He said the only thing I've ever seen are these Frankenstein particles, and I went, what? He said, yeah, these Frankenstein particles, they stitch these things literally together in the lab. So I went and I looked in the NIH database, and there, where you go to buy your HIV samples in the NIH database, what they do is they use their PCR experiments to knit together parts of what they consider and my God, we're 700 degrees away from reality already, because we're in parts and consider parts of what you consider retroviral genomes based on Peter Duesberg's model of the retrovirus, by the way, and then you stitch them together and you have all of these different things. And I said, do any of them hurt T cells? And the answer is no.
Wow.
So I check out.
I want to get back to Celia's point, but for clarity, we all know what we're talking about, but the listeners, might be getting a little confused and fall behind. The key questions are: is AIDS contagious or not contagious? That's the first thing. It's never been demonstrated that it is contagious disease. It clearly is not. The second thing is, if it is an infectious agent, HIV, does it cause AIDS? And we're pretty sure it does not, because it's not a contagious disease. Plus, it's a retrovirus, and no retroviruses cause any disease at all. And the other thing is it sexually transmitted? And since AIDS is not a contagious disease, not transmitted, it's no more transmitted than lung cancer is, for example, from cigarette smoking. And then retroviruses in particular are not sexually transmitted. There's no example of a sexually transmitted retrovirus, including HIV. Then the fourth thing was, does this thing called HIV even exist? And it is, in my mind, it truly exists in the laboratory, because I know scientists personally who I have worked with who have synthesized a thing, a retrovirus, that they stick a label on and they call HIV. So that is the closest thing that I know of to saying that HIV exists.
It exists, you're saying, as a synthetic construction, then.
It's a synthetic
not an organic not an organic thing. Is that?
Yeah, and the Los Alamos National Laboratory now has cataloged over 400,000 different HIVs, if you can believe that.
Yeah.
What?
Over 400,000 different HIVs, and HIV only has about 9,700 nucleotides. So,
but you get what Dave's saying, though. The only thing to call HIV is the stuff that you literally knit together out of stray samples that you cull out of people's T cells, or out of these white cancer blood cells that are left over, by the way, from Robert Gallo's Tiddlywinks in the 70s. I mean, he was doing this in the 70s, 76.
Tiddlywinks.
In 76, this is the most beautiful story. Robert Gallo comes forward and says, I've found a virus that causes cancer. He then Robin Weiss and the guys now who are on board with him say, you're full of it. You just mixed together 3 monkey samples. And he goes, whoops. And he goes away, literally goes away for 5 years. Because he did. He mixed together 3 monkey samples. He said it was an accident. In 81, he comes back and he goes, I've discovered a virus that causes cancer. What did he do? You won't miss the irony here. He says it's a sexually transmitted retrovirus that comes from monkeys that Africans got, and it was spread through the slave trade. Does that sound familiar? The thing was already modeled.
That I've never heard. Where'd you find that?
Dave knows this. It's he calls it HTLV1.
Well, I know about HTLV1, but I
yeah.
never heard this about the slave trade. That Gallo says that was the that I never heard.
That rings a bell to me. That sounds familiar.
Yeah, you can look it up. It's that was his model. His model was always sex, Africans, monkeys, slave trade. It was always
and
the
finally
same.
it took with HTLV3. It finally took.
Yep. That's the story.
Well, Liam, I want tell us what this study is actually saying. Even though I read the head of it at the opening of the show, but tell us first, just straight, what they're saying with this study.
Well, they're crazy.
Okay,
I mean,
you have to. It's better to be infected. Did I get it right when I said they're saying it's better? It's best not to be infected, but it's second best to be double infected.
It's what Dave said. They're rationalizing. Like when you catch somebody doing something they're not supposed to do, and they go, "Well, who ate the ice cream?" Well, I didn't eat the ice cream, but there's ice cream on your face. A raccoon put it there, and the raccoon ate the ice cream and then came to my face and put the ice cream on my face. So that's where they are kind of in the argument.
Wait, but why not just be quiet and say nothing? Why are they doing this?
I don't know. Because they're making money. They're making money hand over fist.
Who alive would believe this?
I'm going to go try it on some of my gay friends later, and I'm going to say, do you believe this study? I guarantee they'll say, no, we don't believe that study. But if I came out with a study that said gay men can get HIV from oral sex, they'd say, I think, yeah, maybe sometimes. Because it's a religion. You know that. It's just a total religion. Yeah, you get all of that. You've written about that. Remember the great papers. I want to point to Ian Young. Remember Ian Young?
Oh, sure.
He's still around. Ian Young's great writing on the cult of the seroconvert. You can find all this at Virusmith. All this beautiful writing. What's the original? Caspar Schmidt? Do I have that right?
Oh, yeah. He did amazing work, Caspar Schmidt. Yeah. Uh-huh.
This great illuminating paper on the gay community and how this whole community has been psychologically deformed and tortured into a position of being essentially Stockholm syndrome. What did you call it? The Alice Miller concept, drama of the gifted child with the abusive parent.
Sparing or idealizing the parent. Stockholm syndrome is the same. It's the same phenomenon. Yeah.
So if the gay community is let's say there's a so-called straight community, and I don't even know what that's supposed to mean, but let's say there are two kids in America, right? There's the straight community and there's the gay community. And the straight community gets the favors, and it gets the birth control pills, and it gets the sexual revolution. And, yeah, it gets the clap, but it gets a shot, and it gets over it. And then it gets married and moves to the suburbs and gets Audis and Volvos. And the gay community, the gay kid is sitting there going, wait. What about me? And the parent says, well, here's one for you, and slaps him hard across the face. And the gay community has to go, well, you did that because you love me. I know.
Exactly. Exactly. We are in total agreement and harmony on that point. We're going to come back. We're going to take a short break. We're going to come back with Liam Scheff and Dave Rasnick and this mind-boggling new HIV study from Fred Hutchinson Cancer Research Center. Okay, we're back, and we have Liam Scheff with us, journalist Liam Scheff. His website is reducetheburden.org. He's a brilliant journalist and satirist of many things, including HIV madness. And Dave Rasnick, who's with us from Berkeley. I just heard a commercial in the break. Apparently there's a radio show on PRN that's about how you can escape to Latin America and live there. So that sounds tempting. So, anyway, okay, a few facts for our listeners. 33 billion, 34 billion. How many billion has our government spent on HIV research, Dave?
Research, I don't know, but all total, American taxpayers, everything on AIDS through next year is $372 billion. You were off by a factor of 10.
Oh, I knew that.
$372 billion.
Oh, my goodness. You see that? There I go again. I'm trying to make it somehow better than it is. $372 billion. Okay, and if we have understood anything, we have understood that the catastrophe is to be HIV infected. And now we're told that if you're infected twice, you are quite possibly an elite neutralizer, and you're better off, and you may harbor the answer to the vaccine. Let me just read from this press release what they say about that. Here we go. The study found that super-infected women had, on average, 1.68 times more neutralizing antibodies than non-super-infected women. This is supposed to be funny, by the way. And they scored much higher in their ability to neutralize the virus. Super-infected women had 1.46 times greater potency than the singly infected women. More than 1.1 million Americans are estimated to be living with HIV today, and every 9.5 minutes someone in the U.S. becomes infected, according to the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. An HIV vaccine is considered, there's your word, Liam, considered the best approach to long-term protection from HIV infection, but attempts to develop such a vaccine so far have met with limited success. Whew. Okay.
Oh, I got to point out something here every time I get a chance. Here it is. This was March 29, 2012. I've got the thing in front of me, too. It says more than 1.1 million Americans are estimated to be living with HIV today. Can you guess how many Americans they estimated back in 1987?
I remember. It was one. I thought it was 1.5 million. They said.
Yeah, it's 1 to 1.5.
Yeah.
They had a range, all right? It's basically been 1 million plus or minus 100,000 here or there ever since 1987.
Oh, I know.
It hasn't changed. Just a constant 1 million, and yet this is supposedly a contagious disease. There's no such thing as a contagious epidemic that is flat. It stays absolutely flat.
Right, and that's Peter Duesberg has been saying that unequivocally. That's another theme of this show. Time to be unequivocal. Dave, when you're clear about something, you're clear and you stay clear and you don't equivocate. I've been equivocating. I'm going to quit. Liam Scheff is past all of this and he's just laughing. Right, Liam?
Well, what can one do? I can have sex with anybody I want to now. It's better for me. I have to go find some prostitutes because it's the only way to protect myself.
I have to say to Celia, you have nothing to apologize for. Absolutely nothing. Your journalism has been right on the mark from the very beginning.
Thank you. I feel I've been. Thank you. I've been a little bit mealy-mouthed. People would be surprised to hear this, but when we were putting that Harper's article to bed, it was called "Out of Control: AIDS and the Corruption of Medical Science" in 2006. There were passages, and I would say to my editor, "Can we soften this a little bit?" Because I was getting nervous, knowing about the stomping that awaited. They didn't know about the stomping yet. I was trying to. I didn't really mention it because it didn't seem like it was in keeping with the vibe. But I tried to soften some things, thinking there's a point to this. I'll get to it. Thinking, if you just make things really, really, really precise and you kind of put something stretchy in there so that the other side is given every kind of benefit of the doubt, somehow it'll all wind up better. And when my editor said, nope, not only can't we soften it, and he would send it back and it would be blunter and harder. And the point of what I'm talking about here is I come back to words like abuse. And why is this abusive? Well, because from the outset, I mean, we're all in this thing, and we have thank you, Gary Null, we have a forum, we now have the internet, we can speak, but what are we in here? And we've been in something very strange for a long time, and whatever it is we're in, we know perfectly well that we're not the ones with I don't want to say power, we're not the ones with authority. So a false, illegitimate authority seized the false, illegitimate authority and has been essentially abusing anybody who dared say what reality was. And that's what this actually is. It's a psychological abuse paradigm. I don't think it's really about science anymore. That's my position.
Really was. Never was.
Hey, can I ask Dave the number 372 billion?
It's billion, as with a B.
Right, billion. Now, this is accumulated U.S. funds?
Yeah, I have it on my website, on the homepage, the chart of it with the references.
Can you give it out? DaveRasnick.com? What is it?
Yeah, it's DavidRasnick.com.
Like it. I'm writing a book. It's going in.
Real simple.
Okay, that brings us to, so if you've been listening to this show, you know that in our very first show, what we were apoplectic about was a certain, I found it on Wikileaks, a CDC, it was part of what Wikileaks called Cablegate, the release of, I think it was millions of U.S. diplomatic cables, and one of them actually was no secret and it was no bombshell, but it slipped past us all. And I declared it a bombshell, and now I declare it an even bigger bombshell, and we've been investigating it, and we've been trying to get through to the CDC about our little bombshell. Dave did get through. I'm going to turn it over to him to tell us what they said, but I'm just going to give our listeners those facts one more time. Okay, so in 1990, the U.S. created a law that prohibited HIV-positive non-citizens from entering the country. Here's a fantastic quote that Dave Rasnick found, which I was not aware of this. This is just to set it up. On April 30th, 2000, President Clinton declared AIDS a threat to the national security of the United States. I knew that part because, quote, AIDS poses the greatest threat to mankind since the bubonic plague in the Middle Ages. We have no way to stop it in terms of science. We certainly don't have vaccines or cures that are available to people in the developing world or here for that matter. So we have to respond to this because we have never seen a crisis like HIV and AIDS globally. Cut to 2010, U.S. government ended this law, terminated that law. Reversed it. Mm-hmm. And a little cable that none of us noticed at the time, thank you WikiLeaks, that called HIV infection, that's their wording, HIV infection, not a communicable disease that is of significant public health risk. So we said this is a huge discrepancy. Some others, even on the dissident side, such as, for example, Professor Henry Bauer, said this is not a big deal, nor is it a change in their position, because they've always said that HIV is not communicable. In other words, you can't get it from a subway pole or from a toilet seat. It's not communicable, but all they're saying now, they're putting it in writing. And we disagree with that. Dave, I want to turn it over to you. Bring us up to date on this.
Yeah, well, the CDC, I've been pestering them politely over the past 3 weeks to provide the new scientific evidence. Let me tell you the explanation they gave in their documents for changing this rule and now allowing HIV-positive non-citizens to enter the USA. They said, in consideration of the scientific evidence, including epidemiologic principles and current medical knowledge regarding the mode of HIV transmission, the Department of Health and Human Services and the CDC proposed to remove HIV infection from the definition of communicable disease of public health significance. But they didn't provide any scientific evidence or epidemiologic principles or current medical knowledge to justify that. Gave no specifics. That was just a general statement. And after repeated attempts, and I've been able to contact the CDC and their media department. I've talked with Christine Pearson for a number of times and had exchange with emails and talked to her on the phone. And she has not been able to come up with any of that new evidence other than that thing that Celia said, that the reason that they gave was that HIV is not spread casually. Casual
that
contact.
Was the word I was looking for. Thank you. Casually.
If that was a new thing, but the CDC is on record since the mid-1980s and consistently so, saying that AIDS and HIV are not spread by casual contact. So there's nothing new there. That could not be the real reason. So anyway, in a period of 10 years, we went from HIV being a threat to the national security of the United States and the greatest threat to mankind since the bubonic plague in the Middle Ages, to now it's not being a communicable disease of significant public health risk. Now, to me and to Celia, that is a major, major change, and that should have been worldwide news, should have been headlines splattered all over the newspapers and TV programs across the world. But it wasn't. It took the WikiLeaks and Celia to actually peruse it and to uncover this thing. This is a substantial change in policy, actually in law. You know, and yet nobody seems to be excited about it except Celia and me.
What do you think, Liam? Are you excited about it?
Well, I mean,
sorry,
I don't
was
have
just
to worry about
Googling
AIDS
for
anymore, apparently.
prostitutes in the city, so I couldn't focus.
Liam, how do you feel about this? If it's possible to feel anything,
it's a WikiLeaks. It's cool. It's big. It should be flooded around. We should send it to who's the guy who knows everything on? He's got the cable comedy show at night. Bill Maher, right? He'd get this.
He would get it, yeah.
He's smart that way. He'd go, because he understands this. I know he does.
I was actually on his show about AIDS many years ago when it was called Politically Incorrect with Bill Maher, and it was me and Bill Maher up against what was her name? I just saw she was one of the Secretary of Health and. Back then, yeah. No, not Heckler. Well, that would have been somebody later. All right, I'll figure it out in time for the next show. But anyway, yes, Bill Maher. I think Bill Maher has lost it. Frankly, I think he's become. Now that's totally irrelevant to this show. I think Bill Maher spiritually is the kind of person where, regardless of what he says, it's not going to make a difference. I just don't think he's a sound human being anymore. I think he's gotten real ugly, and he's very misogynistic. Sorry, I just had to say that. He
might be. I don't know. I never.
But anyway, sure, we could get it through to Bill Maher. But I mean, is it? Or are they concede? What do you think they're doing, Liam? You had an idea about what they're doing. That this is part of the big. Here's why we have ice cream on our face, and there was a raccoon, and etc.
Well, that's just about rationalization. You know, when you've done something and you don't want to do it. I mean, we've all known people who say, "Did you eat my?" No, I didn't eat it, but there's a trail going into your room. Well, you might have done it and forgotten. You know, just nothing you say will make sense to them. So, nothing they say will make sense because they just don't want to take the blame. But look where we are in society. President Obama, Barry, just signed this thing called the NDAA. And this is a provision for emergency situations, and get this, for non-emergency situations in which the two secretaries, that of Defense and Commerce, own all of the transportation and the food in the country. So these are what they're saying is in emergency and non-emergency situations now, the very limited set of non-elected officials, as in Deutschland in about 39, I think they got there, own everything in the country. Hold on a second. The Supreme Court just said that any police officer anywhere may arrest you and strip search you because they didn't say it was against the laws of the United States to strip search somebody for a basic arrest. So if you look across the big spectrum of the United States, and you see that we, the people, have been made to foot a multi-trillion-dollar bailout bill for essentially international foreign banking, then the whole HIV thing falls into perspective. It's essentially you understand this. I know you get this. It's a recapitulation of the old eugenics of the early 20th century, whereby certain people had to be contained. And this is just that viral mindset. It was the Jews, now it's Africans, then whoever they say it's going to be, most Americans are going to get up and say, as long as it's not me. As long as it's not me.
That's right, yeah. But so you think it was fully conscious, not some quasi-unconscious thing. You think this is conscious
Some people
eugenics.
Are very conscious about it. I mean, I don't think that a lot of I don't think my uncle really gets it. He's very bright, but under the microscope kind of bright. Like, these guys get lost under the microscope. Yeah. And Dave knows all these guys. He knows exactly what I mean.
I'm certain Anthony Fauci knows it's all a pile of horse hooey. But it's too late. It's too late to pull back.
Why are you certain of that, Dave? Why do you say that?
Because he's not stupid. He knows what's going on. The thing of it is you make a big mistake if you think the people the people in power aren't smart enough to know what's going on. Clinton and all these other people have known what it was. It's totally irrelevant what the truth is about science. One thing that I've learned over the course of my life, anyway, is that all governments lie to their people all of the time for all sorts of reasons, you know? And the subject itself is really sort of irrelevant. It's how they want to use the stuff. I see this, the AIDS and the contagious AIDS paradigm is very similar in my mind to how food has been used as a geopolitical tool or geopolitical weapon. Food has been used by many powerful nations throughout the centuries, and medicine has, and certainly I think AIDS has. The United States has certainly inflicted this AIDS myth on the world, and they use it. They spent $372 billion of taxpayer money. Who knows how much the pharmaceutical industry has got? And they've convinced the Chinese and the Russians and the Africans and everybody else in the world that they're right about this, except for people like Thabo and Becky and the people of Africa. A lot of people don't realize that the people of Africa get this. They do not take the ARVs unless they some of them live in Cape Town or places like that. They'll take them, but by and large, Africans do not take these drugs.
Yeah, I think you're quite right about that. I still feel there's something in this that we have not understood. There's something about it.
You mean the critics don't understand?
Yeah, I think to our credit, we were innocent in the sense that we took things at face value, and there's just layers and layers to this thing, and it has something to do. It has a lot to do with global resources. It's stuff that goes back probably about 100 years to the beginning of the last century, and it's rooted in something. It comes out of stuff that we haven't yet begun to talk about. It comes out, and Liam, I utterly agree with you about these are fascist times, but this is probably the first time America has really experienced this kind of, that we don't recognize it. I think that's why we're so vulnerable. We don't, as a people, really think there is such a thing as fascism. Not really.
Americans don't believe in conspiracy theories, but all of their movies and TV shows and novels and everything that we like to watch is about people lying to each other, in Government 24 and Die Hard, and all the movies that come out are always about massive government conspiracies.
That's very true.
If I could flip one switch in the American mind, it would be to take what you think is true in movies and to apply it to real life. Just like Dave said, governments lie, that's their job.
But then you have to indict your parents.
How dare you, Mother?
You know?
I know.
And actually, America, sorry, but I'm not going to let go of this. We are a young nation, and people have called us teenagers. And teenagers haven't indicted their parents. I mean, they're trying to indict their parents. They're trying to get free and break away and leave home, but they can't really do it yet. And that's where we are as a people, I think. So all those countries and continents you mentioned, Dave, I don't really know. I'd love to know. Do you really think that in China, the average Chinese person thinks that?
No, I'm talking about governments. I'm
okay.
Sorry. That's why I made the point with the African people themselves. The African governments buy into it. The African people do not. I think the same is true in China.
I have to tell a story. I was with Christine Majori in Concord, Massachusetts, at a conference held by some fascinating people up there who their goal is to reseed the transcendentalist revolution in the United States. Very interesting people. Christine was speaking, and she was on a panel, and these transcendentalist folks tried to get somebody from the Orthodoxy to be on the panel with Christine, and the one guy finally agreed to come, and he was kind of affable, low ranking, and he told a story, and his story was this, that he said he was in Vietnam, and there were 3 young men sitting on a log, and he went over to them as an AIDS educator. I can't remember which bureaucracy he was from, but his job was to be in foreign countries and scare people about AIDS. And he went over to them and he said, "What are your dreams? What do you want to become?" And one of them said, I want to become a pilot. One of them said, I want to become an architect. They expressed what their dreams were for their lives, for themselves, for their careers. And this guy said to them, you can do that. You can do all that if you don't get HIV. Do you know how to not get HIV? And started the safe sex rap. And I just, in my mind, I thought, what if that were reversed, right? And a Vietnamese man found 3 young Americans on a log in America and asked them what their dreams were as a kind of Santa Claus figure, ambassador of how to have a life in the world. Do you see how fascinating that is, that we deign to show up in these countries and tell these people what their dreams and futures may hinge on, and it all hinges on don't become HIV positive? How twisted is that?
Secular missionary work.
Missionary work, exactly.
I was in the Peace Corps for a while, and I tell you, I learned very much. The Peace Corps was basically secular missionaries, and that's what all this stuff is about. It's to go in and basically gently brainwash people into accepting Westerners, markets, products, and just that's basically what it is.
Right. This is an American product. Fear of HIV is an American product.
It's red, white, and blue. AIDS is red, white, and blue.
And I do think that there would be I don't think it's possible there's going to be a big wake up and a backlash and everything. I think it's all just too far gone. There are no real feelings you could have about this except total despondency if you're taken into a magic room and shown the truth about everything.
There is one big difference. One I think. If the American people, they're the only ones that really matter anymore. The rest of the world doesn't really care about AIDS. You heard what Ruggiero said about Italy. It's just not a European concern.
It's like a joke, yeah.
But if the American people woke up one day and realized that everything that they were told by their government about AIDS was wrong, a pile of crap, and the government knew it, and they just kept going, I think that would undermine and seriously jeopardize the legitimacy of institutional society in general. And I think the government knows that.
It would.
Liam?
Because if you take away the HIV magic bullet, you take away the Kennedy magic bullet, you take away the Twin Towers magic bullet, you take away these totems, from the American public that believes they're watching another Transformers movie, and you go, hey, morons, you have to apply the same logic you'd apply at the grocery store balancing your own checkbook to what the government does, and everybody would go, but if we did that, we'd be terrified.
Well, gentlemen, we're out of time. This has been a fascinating hour, Liam. I hope you'll come back.
Yeah.
They've taken away a lot, but they haven't taken away this microphone or this show.
So far.
Thank you, Gary. No. We'll be back next Friday. This is Radio Free Science. I'm Celia Farber. You're listening to the Progressive Radio Network.